Hey, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast. My name is Mo, and I will be sitting in the host chair today. And welcoming back to the show, one of my good buddies, retired CW, that's Chief Warrant Officer, for David Morphis. Dave, what's up, dude?
Hey, how's it going, Mo? Glad to be here.
I know you're still working in the civilian area. You're not going to retire for a few more years, but how has retirement from the Army been?
I want to say I want to run back to the military, but honestly, it's just been so busy. Life has been very busy here with all the kids, big family, and my civilian job. I jumped into a management role in my civilian job, so it's been busy. But I do think about you guys often, and I wonder every once in a while when I know you guys are on drill, I wonder what you guys are up to.
Well, we miss you, brother, and you are welcome to come by anytime, but you already know that. And if you haven't heard a previous episode with Dave and I, you need to hear the chili dog story. Whenever anybody in our unit thinks about food in the field, we never do so without talking about the infamous Chief Warrant Officer Dave Morphis chili dog fiasco. And it wasn't his fault, but he's the one who fixed it, and he's the one who
Yeah,
took the brunt for it. So
I did. I did. I got chewed. I had a little bit of a butt chewing from that one. It was tough.
oh man, that was
Got
good.
to do what you got to do.
Yeah, Dave, we have a pretty exciting topic we're going to be going through today, and it is important to you because you said you have quite a few. How many kids do you have now, Dave?
I have 9 kids.
Nine
I
kids.
have one boy. He's my second kid, and then the rest are girls. That's 8 girls and one
Man.
boy.
Woo!
And just recently, I had the realization that my son is getting older. He's turned 16 just in a few weeks. And he's only got a few years and then he's going to leave the home and I'll be stuck with just a whole household of estrogen.
Well, every time I go there, man, it is both crazy and it's controlled chaos.
Yeah, that's a good description right there. Control chaos. I like it.
But it's always worth it because I get chocolate chip pancakes and they are always to die for. So you got to go to the
Yeah,
Morpheus house.
it's doing so. And
I
they're
love it.
phenomenal.
Dave, today we want to talk about the power of persuasion. So tell me more. Tell me more about that.
Okay. So persuasion, I would break it up into two major categories: friend or peer pressure persuasion, something kind of like what we're talking about here. But you can get a little bit more down and dirty when you're talking about teenagers who are the most susceptible to, I think, peer pressure. Obviously, we know adults who are very susceptible. In fact, you go and look at a menu in a restaurant, and what do you see? You don't see words, you see pictures. That's persuasion. Because
Yeah.
more often than not, you're going to choose what is shown in the most delightful way, right? You're gonna see the picture of an item and say, that item right there looks amazing. I would like to eat
Right.
that, please. Well, that's persuasion. You've been persuaded by a picture. So I was thinking when it comes to friends, and we'll get more into this, I think, later in our talk, but choices and consequences, which I think is what I wanted to evolve into. But when you have a friend group, if you choose your friends poorly, then you might be making very poor choices based on their persuasions. Now, that would be considered the peer pressure side of it. And that's one of the reasons I've been thinking about it a lot. We have a lot of kids and they have friends, and we have a lot of adult friends who have kids who have made very, very poor friend decisions. And those poor friend decisions have led them into following bad persuasions. But I wanted to talk more simply first because we have another good example. When was the last time you went to the movie theater?
Gosh, it had to be at least a couple of years ago.
Yeah, well, it's kind of same here. I don't go to the movie theaters as often, but what do you remember seeing as soon as you sit down? You sit down and what happens? What do you see flashing on the screens?
Everything at the concession stand, and then I get back up and I go buy myself some popcorn and a Coca-Cola.
Right? They don't just put pictures of
Yeah.
cup of soda. They put pictures of soda that's bubbling and being poured into the cup that is going to be served to you. They don't just show pictures of popcorn. They show popcorn being light and fluffy, falling from the kettle and
Yeah.
lightly buttered. I mean, I want some popcorn and soda right now, just thinking
Yeah.
about what I remember. But you
Yes.
know what else? Do you remember when we were kids? You didn't really see those on the screen before the movie started. maybe movie premieres or previews, but you didn't see any of the advertisements really.
Yeah, it's funny when we, if I may, the two that I remember is the Silence is Golden,
Yeah.
where it tells you to be quiet, and then also this was probably kind of an ad, but remember the raisins that used to dance to the heard it through the, I think it was the I heard it through the grapevine song, and they would dance on screen.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was necessarily an ad for raisins
Raisinets,
or
maybe?
maybe,
Maybe raisin?
but to your point, I think to answer specifically, I don't remember it being as in your face. It could have been, but I guess it's evolved quite a bit because that's all I see now.
I agree with you. When we were kids, we went to the movie theater, we saw a movie, and you'd have a fair amount of people chatting, and you'd have, every once in a while you'd see some disturbances. In fact, I had so many that you'd have ushers in the movie theater that would walk up and down. I remember ushers tapping people on the shoulders and asking them to be quiet. I remember people being asked to get up and leave because they're being
Could you
so loud.
imagine that now?
You can't imagine it now
No
because it would
way.
never happen. So a couple things about that. People have cell phones now. And so they have to do something to remind people to put their cell phones on silence so that they don't disturb people who are trying to enjoy the movies. Also, I think there's been a big genuine push for people to enjoy the theater, enjoy the movie. But that's another persuasion. You see that and it says silence is golden. I don't remember seeing that until maybe the mid 90s. That was like an AMC advertisement kick because I think the mid 90s is when cell phones were starting to become more mainstream, but Silence is Golden actually, I think, came out just before everybody started having cell phones. I think it was when they're even just starting to kick off with the beepers. Do you remember pagers and beepers?
I do. I had one.
I did too. I did too.
We were pretty cool back then.
We certainly were, man. Then if you had two pagers, you must have been a doctor.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, you had that. You had the launch codes.
Yeah, that's right. That was a silly time. You get a pager and that just reminded you to go find a phone. So, that's weird. But you know what? The reason I was thinking about persuasion also is because when I was in college, and this was in the early 2000s, this is 2001, very specifically 2001. And I was in college taking a speech class. And I might have mentioned this before, but not as much in detail. And a young girl got up, she was my peer, I guess. That was, she was in her maybe 18, 19 or 20 or something along those lines. She stood up and gave a persuasion speech on the Army Reserves. And I'll tell you what, she persuaded me because within 2 weeks I was signing papers.
No way.
Yeah.
That's how you got in the Army?
That's how I got in the Army, because she gave a persuasion speech, talked about the benefits of being in the Army Reserves. I still remember to this day thinking to myself, I got free weekends. Okay, I can do that. Let's see. Yeah, I want to learn a cool skill. Sure. So money for college? Yeah, okay, sign me up. This sounds pretty good. So I did. I went in on my own. I'm an adult, so I can do whatever I want, right? But I went on my own and I started the process. So, again, choices and consequences, and we're going to get into this more. I made a decision, and that took over 21 years of my life. That one persuasion speech.
Does that girl know to this day that?
Honestly, I don't even know. I don't remember her name. I was
going to say, do you remember her name? You don't remember anything.
No.
What the heck? Wow. Well, I'm glad that she made that speech.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, you never know what decision's going to make impacts in your lives. So I thought that would be interesting. I wanted to talk about sales, door-to-door sales and persuasion when it comes to sales. You ever have anybody knock on your door?
Absolutely. Back in the 90s, the encyclopedias.
Yeah. Or the vacuum sales, like the Kirby vacuum.
Absolutely. Right? Those people are
home
still
security.
Out there,
yeah, they still are. Solar panels.
Solar, yep.
I have somewhat background in advertisement because I have a bachelor's degree in business marketing. But also all growing up, my dad was in commercial advertising, and then he went into other things, jingle writing, and not really jingle writing, but he stayed in basically in advertising. So I've got a pretty good background in sales, and I've also done door-to-door sales myself, and I've read a few books on sales. But you know what's interesting about door-to-door sales? You are less likely to make a sale, complete your persuasion, unless you get into the house. And
Really?
that's like,
Huh.
yeah, there's a statistic on that. I don't want to misquote a statistic. At least half of sales
Wow.
will, or at least you are 50% more likely. Okay, I just did it. I did a percentage, but you are at least twice more likely to complete a sale or persuade an individual to buy your product and service if you are able to get your foot in the door. And why is that? What do you think?
Well, I mean, personally, maybe just because that creates more of a connection with somebody. They're coming into something that is yours. It's in your space.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Another interesting thing is sales is basically just a transfer of enthusiasm. So, and is that not persuasion, right? Back to the chocolate chip pancakes. If I am enthusiastic about eating a chocolate chip pancake, which I believe I'm going to have for breakfast this morning, and if I talk about it sufficiently so that you walk away thinking you also want chocolate chip pancakes, that's persuasion.
Yeah.
But with a product or service, is it no different? I mean,
Yeah.
it's the same thing. It's a slow incremental commitment that leads us to idea or sales purchase or persuasion. And the best advertisers will do that without you even knowing about it. You know, when you're walking in the mall, those pictures you see outside the stores, the people walking around eating a hot dog or eating some baked treat, that's all persuasion. And that's like, there are some places that will, this is another one. I'm sorry. I'm just kind of bouncing back and forth from ideas here, but when you go in, have you been into model homes when looking at homes for purchase or anything like that? And I
Yeah.
don't know.
Of course.
So what do you remember smelling? Do you happen to remember smelling baked cookies? It's a very common thing.
Really? No, I
Yeah.
don't. But they like pump that into the house,
Yeah. Well, what they'll
dude.
do, this is a realtor trick that, realtor friends of mine do all the time. What they'll do is they'll bake cookies. That does a couple things. If you've got families coming through, fantastic. They're eating a cookie. But anybody, it's just the smell of baked cookies makes a home smell like a home. So
Wow.
when you walk in, you automatically
Yeah.
feel like you're home.
Dude, that is crazy. I mean, but that makes sense.
Yeah.
Wow. Doesn't one of your kids have a cookie baking business? Didn't I buy some of her cookies?
They're all doing businesses.
They are all entrepreneurs. I mean,
They are, yeah.
even the smaller ones. It's incredible,
Yeah.
Dave.
I have coworker friends that are regularly putting them to work, paying them to, they even call me up and say, hey, I've got a baby shower coming up. Can your kids put together party favor baked goods, gift boxes that they can walk away with from the party? Like, yeah, I'm pretty sure they can. Let me go double check. And they're all, yes, I can. They like money. They like baking. Those particular ones, they made small cheesecakes, little cupcake sized cheesecake, turtle flavored with caramel and pecan crumble,
My
candied
gosh,
pecans on top with caramel drizzle. They're amazing. My kids made them. Then fudge and giant cookies. It's all delicious.
man. Let me ask you a leadership question, Dave. So, as a father of several kids from, I mean, and they're far apart, obviously, with 9 of them. How do you teach them emotional intelligence, and how does emotional intelligence play into becoming a more persuasive person? Because if I understand it, we are persuaded, but we also want to become people who can persuade others.
First, you have to teach a kid how to, I guess, read people, how to understand what people motivates people. If you children understand what motivates people, and honestly, they do that without much training because children are
Wow.
naturally manipulative.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, that's the case. So if a kid wants cookies, but understands that he or she needs to appear like he or she's been doing a really good thing and should be rewarded with cookies, well, then that kid is going to do what is necessary to get a cookie. So if that means the kid's got to get the chores done on time in order to be available to have treats, well, then that's what the kid's going to do. Or if maybe all it takes is a kid to say something really sweet or nice to the mom and say, you know, oh, I love that those cookies look amazing. Mom, can I have one of those cookies? That was a kid being manipulative because gave a compliment to a craft a mom created, something that the mom created. And then the mom is going to think, wow, maybe they are looking, they do look good. I'm glad you like the way they look. I worked hard on
Right.
them and you just gave me a compliment. So yeah, at a minimum, that kid's probably going to get half a cookie, because now the mom wants to eat one. But
That's right.
I think the kids just need to learn what motivates people in order to be a good persuader. Because if an individual doesn't know what a person's going to want, then they're not going to know how to present something to a person in a way that's going to persuade them.
At what age do you think you can start actually having those conversations with kids, with young people, to teach them the difference between manipulation, getting what they want for them, and persuasion, which is really more of a win-win way of teaching things?
Well, we homeschool our kids. So really
Yeah,
there's no classes in session time. It's just living life. And every moment that we're living life, if we find an opportunity to teach, then we teach. Even as young as 2 years old. I mean, as young as a kid can understand that decisions result in things, then we can teach them something. And if my 2-year-old is asking for something, then I simply use that as a teaching moment. Well, I understand that this is what you want, but you're going to have to finish picking up the floor in order to get this something that you want. Or, maybe if you want cookies, well, we don't have any, but maybe you can help me make cookies and then we'll have cookies, something along those lines, and just little things. Or usually, a lot of the teaching in that category will come when they do something that when they're obviously trying to manipulate. I'll just simply call it out for what it is. And I'll say, hey, you're trying to manipulate me. I don't appreciate that. This is not the right way to go about it.
wow, that is great. What a great teaching moment.
Yeah. Well, no shortage of those in a household of 9 kids.
Hey Dave, let's switch to choices and consequences because
Fantastic.
I'm really intrigued to hear what you have to say about this. What does it mean to you that every choice has a consequence, and why is this an important topic to you?
Okay. It's a hugely important topic for me, but for me as a dad of 9 children, but also individually, right? We all have consequences to our choices. And that doesn't necessarily just mean bad consequences, because I don't want to stick with the negative. You can have good consequences. And that's something that we have to teach our kids too. So
Absolutely.
you remember what happened when you were like 2, 3, or 4 and you touched a hot stove?
Yeah, it hurt and I didn't touch it again.
Right? That's a very, very simple example of choices and consequences. But, and I remember my son, he came to me once and he was about 4 or 5 years old and he was playing with his sister's like necklace and he was looping it over a cord that was kind of halfway plugged in his bedroom. And that thing hit the metal prong and of course gave him the shock of his life, you
No
know?
way.
Yeah. And I remember I was there that day and he shrieked out and we run into the room and find out because, every parent will know the difference between a complaining, whiny shriek or I'm in pain and something bad happened shriek. Every
Yeah.
parent understands the difference between those yells. But we ran in and he was backed away from the cord and he was kind of crying and he talked about how he got shocked, or maybe he didn't say he got shocked. He had a hard time articulating, but we figured it out.
Yeah.
So I think that those are simple examples. They are choices that exhibit very immediate consequences, right? And
Yeah.
hopefully it teaches lessons to not do it again so that we can, learn. And I think that choices and consequences, the two combined, are learning moments. But I think that there are more complex examples. Friend choices are something I talked about a little bit before, but if a person chooses the wrong friends and it's tough. I mean, it's tough to choose friends. We all have like a longing to belong to peer groups. We all want acceptance in life. So I know when I was younger, one of the easiest peer groups for me to belong with were the bad kids because they kind of accepted anyone. They weren't really discriminatory against their groups unless you clearly didn't belong. I remember my early high school days, I had some school friends. They were school friends, but Fortunately, they weren't very good friends because they were talking about their drug use in the background, when they weren't at school. And of course, you thinking 9 and 10-year-olds, no, they're doing drugs. But yeah, they're doing drugs. They were smoking weed and talking about all kinds of bad stuff. And fortunately, like I said, I was not very close friends with them because I probably would have gotten into that also. But at least I had the sense enough back then to not do that. But I do know that I've been in friend spheres that taught me how to like shoplift and stuff. And those are bad things. They persuaded me that it was accepted and easy and I should do it. So I got into that and it was terrible. And that was one of those choices that I kind of paid for over and over again. And it's unfortunately the result of bad choices. They result in bad consequences. I know, Mo, that I work in a federal prison, right?
I do.
Yeah. So that's filled with people who made bad choices and reaped bad consequences and are still reaping bad consequences. But most of them agree it's just their friends. We have a lot of gang members in prison. And what do? It's just a bad friend group. The bad friend group teaches them and persuades them to do bad things. And it's a series of bad things that lead them into prison. So it's unfortunate. So yeah, bad consequences could be in the future. But what do you think of when you think of choices and consequences?
Well, when I grew up and when we were growing up, right, I remember my mom telling me there's certain kids you can hang out with and there's certain kids that you can't hang out with because I want you to be the kind of friend that parents want their kids to hang out with.
Sure,
she never wanted me to be the kid who was the bad influence. And I probably was the bad influence. I think we all are on both sides of that, right? But I really appreciated that because my mom was teaching me that my choices have consequences. And I love, Dave, what you said, that consequences aren't always bad. There's good consequences and bad consequences. You do something good and there's going to be good consequences. You do something bad, there's going to be bad consequences. Or as I like to tell young leaders all the time, and especially I like to tell my student athletes all the time, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And it's really up to them. And being an athletic coach for my entire adult life, I'm constantly teaching kids, having leadership moments with young people and saying, this is what you did. What would you do if you were me? And when I put it that way, I think that's, I guess, Dave, now that I think about it, that's a persuasive speech that I give to kids because I'm helping them understand, if I was coach, man, I've been put in a pretty bad situation. Coach is in a pickle. That's the same thing. I learned that from my mom. She would say, well, what would you do if you were me? If you acted like this in front of people? And because I had a pretty bad temper when I played sports and I would do stupid things. And my mom would help me understand that, well, there's going to be consequences. So let's figure this out together. So, I mean, that's what I think. And so I guess the question I have for you is whether it's young people or old people, anywhere in between, because you have a ton of kids, you're hanging out with people who are in a correctional facility. And so I'm sure they are anywhere from 18 to 88. How can leaders make better choices, and how can we help leaders make better choices without taking away their autonomy? Because I find that a lot of times when we try to help people, they feel like we're taking away their autonomy. And I'm sure that kids feel that dad's just trying to run my life, mom's just trying to run my life. So how do we help leaders? How do we help young people make better choices without taking away their autonomy?
I'd say you point out when they're making the choices themselves, and you point out what good comes from making good choices. For example, if one of my kids chooses to finish their chores, then they have the privilege of playing games and eating treats, right? Those are good consequences. We can simply say, listen, you have all these chores. If you just make good choices and get them done, you have all these good privileges. You point out to them. And if they actively do something of their own volition that is a good thing, making a good choice, then we reward that. We pointed out, I think that as you pointed out, age like 2 all the way to 99, everywhere in between, we're all making choices. And as far as our future leaders, they need to understand when they have made a choice that has impacted them on some level, whether it's negative or positive. If they learn to understand where their choices are being made and how those choices have impacted their lives, then they will become better leaders.
Wow. Dave, how does, with such a large family, I know that faith and values are very important to you because you want to teach your values, your principles to your kids because, like you said, your oldest kids right now, they're on the edge of adulthood and they're going to be out in the real world pretty soon. So how do faith and values come into play when they're faced with tough decisions? How do you bring that into the mix?
That's a good question. Well, you're right. Faith is like the central focal point of our family. And we do attend church and they do attend other program opportunities, church related. And we also study the family and the scriptures daily. And we talk about things. We talk about things all the time. And I think that one of the main ways we can benefit our children along the faith and living lines is, first of all, this is going to sound silly, but my wife has said to my kids before they became teenagers, there's no such thing as teenager. We go from youth to young adults. And if you think of it that way, then young adult is a title. They are young adults. They are adults in training. And now what we're doing is we're teaching our teenage aged kids to become adults. And so it's a perspective flip. And if they're acting like teenagers, we'll call them out. We'll say, listen, you're acting like a teenager right now. That's not good. So, and some of their friends are teenagers and we have to point that out to them too, like, listen, so-and-so and such are doing teenagery things. That sounds pretty whiny and you're above that. This is not good. So you just teach them. I think that when we involve faith in our teaching, it's just better. The results are better. We also need to make sure the communication is wide open. First of all, that way teaching moments are more prevalent. And also it gives the leaders in training an opportunity to voice their opinions, even if they think it's a stupid opinion. They don't have a problem bringing it up because we have the communication lines wide open. And I'll tell you, it's worked. We have friends whose teenager, they don't bring things up. They don't talk to their parents anymore. And if the parents try and bring something up, they say, Mom or Dad, that's just stupid or whatever, some teenagery angsty thing, right? And so far, so good. I've got my oldest is going to be an 18-year-old. She's going to be a legal adult here in 6 months. And you know what? She still talks to her mom and brings up whatever, and we chat with our kids. And I think that's because we are family oriented more than peer oriented in our household. We express that concern too. We talk to the kids about that. We say, listen, if you're acting like a teenager, I guess, then that must mean you need more time with the family because you are too peer oriented and that's not good. So we rein them in a little bit and they get a little bit less friend time. So that's on purpose. We do that on purpose because it's more important that they're family oriented rather than peer oriented because family will never go away. Peers, they're friends, they're going to come and go. Yeah, sure, they might have some friends for the rest of their lives, but it's not as likely. They're seasonal.
Yeah, I was listening to a psychiatrist who was on a recent podcast, and she said the same thing as you. She said, family vacations, for instance, can I bring my friend? No, you can't bring your friend. This is for the family to reconnect. And so I know you guys don't have that problem because your kids are always there with you and you're very specific and you're very intentional about that time. But I think, family is blood, right? Family is always there. Family's going to be there. And so, gosh, I can't believe your oldest is going to be 18. You only had like 3 or 4 kids the first time I went over to your house, Dave.
Yeah. And it probably felt like 100 kids, right? You had all their attention and they were all over you.
It did, man. I was sitting under a computer because you were showing me some stuff and they were all saying things at the same time. I didn't know what was going on. And you were unfazed. So maybe that's why you were good in the Army, Dave, because it didn't matter no matter how distracted you were when you were downrange and when you were deployed, there was less going on in your life, even with bombs falling, than when you're at your house.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
There's a bit of truth to that.
Right, yeah. And if you want to hear about some of Dave's Army exploits, there's previous episodes, and I'm going to have him talk more about those as well in upcoming episodes. But Dave, I wanted to ask you about one last topic. You recently saw an older movie with Gwyneth Paltrow called Sliding Doors.
Yeah, this is a cool movie.
You got some really cool tidbits from it. I wanted to watch it before a segment, but this came on so fast. I haven't been able to watch it yet. Why don't you share with the audience a quick plot of the movie and why you thought it was relevant to this
Sure.
conversation?
Yeah. I'll just relay the basic plot outline that it'll be in the movie. It's like, the kids are up and around now. But the movie is, I guess it's the first 10 minutes of the movie, so I'm not really ruining anything for anybody who wants to go check it out. And I suggest you do because it's a very interesting, thought-provoking movie. This would be a great date movie just because it opens up a communication. You know how date movies are not great dates, and because
Right.
unless they are thought-provoking like this one, so that it'll give hours of communication afterward. That's good. So Sliding Doors with Gwyneth Paltrow is great because it starts with her in her apartment and it takes place in like London area. And she leaves her apartment and she's running behind. So you can clearly see she's running behind. And so she's running behind, but she's running to the subway. And the movie takes a split when she's at the subway doors because in one split, she trips before she gets to the subway and the doors close right in front of her. And then the subway takes off. And then the other one, she avoids the trip. She makes it in the door. So now the movie it follows two different Gwyneth Paltrows, right? And on the one hand, she missed her train. And so she's like, I'm not going to be able to catch the next one. I'll be late for this. So she goes back to her apartment and discovers her boyfriend or fiance or husband. I can't remember exactly, but it was cheating on her. So she catches something, that she wouldn't have caught otherwise. So it's just the one choice to go back to the apartment or the one action to get on the subway and go to work. She had a completely flipped life. It was everything changed from that one action. And I think that is intriguing. So I was thinking about choices and consequences for us. And will we ever know? Does the one Gwyneth Paltrow character who made it on the subway know about the possibilities of what would happen if she missed it? We would never know necessarily. We might not have never, ever know what choice was going to impact our lives. So I was thinking, and this is where, hours of discussion can come into play. Like you could you could talk all day long about the potential futures. And that's what Marvel has gotten into with all these different worlds, right? These split worlds where you have the same person, but they just grew up differently. And so they're different people in different lands. So this multiverse concept. So I guess Sliding Doors is really kind of ahead of its time because now Marvel's picked up on the Sliding Doors idea, the concept of different universes.
Right.
But I mean, do we know that if we walk out the door now versus if we do it 20 minutes from now, if it's really going to make a difference? I would say more often than not, it's not going to make a difference. The minor ones, but that seemed to be a minor one also. And yet in her character's life, it made a big difference. So a person who's paranoid might look at that and say, man, I'm never going to make big decisions in my life. I don't want things to change drastically like that. I'm going to stay in my house. So, maybe you don't. I've known people who stay in their home more often than not. I'm not saying she just stayed in her home, but she didn't make choices. My grandmother I have an example to give to you. And my both grandmothers lived drastically different lives. One of them, she never got a driver's license. I'm not saying she didn't live her life and she didn't leave the house. She went grocery shopping. She took the bus and whatnot. But in today's day and age where we have groceries even delivered to us, things might have been different if that was available to her as well. But she never got a driver's license. She didn't do as much. She kind of lived in her shell. And when she was older, she did crosswords and watched TV, and that was all she did. On the other hand, you have my other grandmother who made all kinds of crazy choices. She lived a life. She lived a pseudo Hollywood lifestyle because of her job, her husband's jobs, and how it dabbled in the Hollywood lifestyle. They had lavish clothing, furs, all kinds of things. They went places. They lived life. She was on the Manhattan Project. I mean, she did,
Wow.
all kinds of crazy things. And she lived till she was 98 years old.
Huh.
And I think that had a lot to do with how she lived her life. She made choices. So I don't think that a person who shields themselves from making important choices is necessarily doing themselves any big favors. So
When I was making a move from one state to another, I was supposed to leave. You're always on a timeline because everything's packed up, you're ready to go. And I remember it was raining so hard. I'm talking cats and dogs, that I called all my guys that were helping me, that were going to load up the trucks and all that kind of stuff, or my truck, my moving truck with, it was like a 20-footer. And I told the guys, we got to wait at least 3 hours. This isn't going to let up. I mean, this is like Midwest flooding kind of stuff. And so we waited 3 hours, and it barely started kind of letting up. And I was so upset. I was so frustrated because I was like 4 or 5 hours back now, and I had 8 hours to drive that day. And so it messed me up, and it threw everything off. And I had to only drive a few hours or whatever. But one of my good friends, my pastor, came over and surprised me during the move. And he and his wife just wanted to say goodbye to me one more time. And I was telling him that story, and he said, Mo, don't worry about it. There was a reason. God had a plan. There's something going on the road. You had to wait. And I didn't want to hear it. I'm thinking, of course, pastor's always right. And so it was one of those Gwyneth Paltrow sliding
yeah,
doors moments where, what if I would have left 4 hours early as opposed to 4 hours later? Who knows? Maybe nothing. But when you were telling that story, Dave, I was thinking, hey, it doesn't matter what happened different. Something happened different, because what I was hoping to do didn't happen at that moment. And so I can only hope, and I'll ask God when I get to the pearly gates one day, hey, tell me about that day. But we'll see. But it was a really good example. So here's my question for you. How can recognizing the weight of even small decisions and how they create differences in our life, how can leaders use this to be intentional in what they do in life?
yeah. So we can be intentional with the decisions we make and do the best we can. What I would suggest is make the choices to the best of your ability in the ways that you believe they're going to benefit you the best and benefit others. I think that leaders, well, we teach our kids, we say, you make good choices, you have good consequences. And if you make a good choice and you have a bad consequence, it's a learning opportunity. And that sometimes we have to go through that in life. And does that mean that we all need to make bad choices in order to learn? No, absolutely not. I learn from others' bad choices. I see other people go through some certain tough times, and I don't have to do it now. I know what that choice is going to lead to, so I can choose not to do that. But when you live in a faith-based family or a faith-based lifestyle, we kind of have blueprints. You can read about making good decisions. There's all kinds of good decisions in scripture that we could draw from. But otherwise, we're taught that we will feel good about making good decisions. And
Right.
oftentimes, those are the good decisions that will benefit others more than us. I think that it's selfless acts and charity, right? In the scriptures, you learn that charity never faileth, and that charity is important, right? We need to have the love of Christ, and that's charity. So when we are doing that, when we are living in that way, then we're going to feel the rewards in ourselves. We will know
Right.
that will be the good consequence. So what you need to do, and I guess what I'm saying is make the decisions and the choices that's going to uplift another, and then it'll benefit you also. And as from a leader standpoint, that's how we're
Right.
teaching our children to be leaders. Look for the others, look out for the others, and do your best with the choices that you have to make to have that good feeling inside, knowing that you made the good choice.
Man, I love that. Well, Dave, before we go, is there a final encouragement that you'd like to give our audience, and how to raise young people to be people of influence and to be leaders?
Yeah, well, I think so. Tough it out. It's not always a parade or a picnic, you know. You can have picnics, sure, picnics are delicious, but no, I think that it can be a challenge. And what we're trying to do, my wife and I, we're trying to raise children that we would like to have as good friends as adults, right?
Yeah.
We want our children to be respectful, good people that we associate with. We want our children to be the type of people we would surround ourselves with. I remember I read an article that you wrote about trusting 5 people, right? And
Yeah.
I want my children to be one of those 5 people. I want them to be the type of people who are wise enough with their decisions and choices that I would consult them if they were my peers.
Sure.
And I think that's important. They're not just snot-nosed little brats that get in our way or that we have to care for because it's unlawful and Child Protection Services is coming to our door if we don't. I mean, we don't want that. We don't want that at all. They're not a burden on us. They have to be little human beings that we want the best for, because we want them in that position when they get older.
That's great. So for our audience, just a couple of questions to maybe think about, which is asking yourself, am I being intentional about the way that I'm making decisions? Am I considering both the immediate and the long-term consequences? And finally, how am I using my influence to help others make better choices? Dave, it's always good to have you on. Man, we've been good friends for a long time, and I know we'll continue to be. We're going to be hitting an array of topics, and I'm just so delighted to have you on the show. So thanks for being here.
You're welcome, Mo. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, and for our audience, make sure you tune in next time at the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast, where we talk about what it means to be a leader and to continually influence others. So don't miss an episode. We'll see you next time.